So you've got $5,000 set aside, and you want to know the best gold and silver to buy with it in 2026. That's a fine question to be asking, and it's one I hear all the time, but I'll tell you right up front that the honest answer isn't a single coin or a single bar. The honest answer starts with a couple of questions I'm going to ask you before I ever hand you a thing, because the right metal for one man is the wrong metal for another. I've watched folks walk in with cash in their pocket and a look in their eye like they need to buy something today or they'll miss the boat. And I understand that feeling, especially with prices moving the way they have this year. But buying metal in a hurry, before you know why you're buying it, is how people end up with a stack they don't understand and can't use the way they hoped. Slow down. $5,000 is real money, and it deserves a real plan. Let me set the table with where things sit right now, because it matters for every choice we're about to make. As I'm talking to you, silver is running around $66 an ounce, near a 6-week high, up about 10% just this month, and that's after it touched a record close to $121 back in January. Gold is sitting around $4,376 an ounce, and that's actually pulled back some from the all-time high it set above $5,000 in February. So both metals have had a wild, mostly climbing year, and the gold to silver ratio is sitting near 67 right now. Hold on to those numbers because they shape the whole conversation. I'm Hank, and I've stacked physical silver and gold for 35 years through every boom and bust, so if you want to stack the smart way, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Now let me walk you through exactly how I'd spend your $5,000, starting with the questions that come first. The first question I ask is simple: why are you buying? And the second one is just as important: what do you plan to do with it later? Those two questions decide everything. A man buying metal to round out his savings and hold for 20 years should not buy the same thing as a man who wants something he can trade for groceries if the lights go out. They're both right to be stacking, but they need different metal in different forms. So before you spend a dollar, get honest with yourself about which kind of stacker you are. I know that sounds slow, and I know when a man's got $5,000 burning a hole in his pocket, he wants me to just point at a coin and say, buy that one. But I've been doing this long enough to have seen what happens when people skip that step. They buy whatever the fellow behind the counter is pushing that day, or whatever they saw somebody bragging about, and then a year later they're sitting on a pile of metal that doesn't fit what they actually needed. Maybe they wanted something to trade with, and instead they bought one big beautiful gold coin they can't break down. Maybe they wanted a long-term store of wealth, and instead they overpaid for a bunch of fancy collector pieces with premiums so high they'll never get their money back out of them. Every one of those mistakes traces straight back to buying before answering those two questions. So humor me and answer them first. Let's say you're the first kind. You've got a retirement account, maybe some property, and you just want a slice of your wealth in something you can hold in your hand, something that isn't paper, isn't a promise, and can't be printed into nothing by folks who never asked your permission. If that's you, my advice is to keep it clean and buy in even increments: a full ounce, a half ounce, a quarter ounce. When you buy in round weights like that, you can always figure your value straight off the spot price without doing a lot of math. A 1-ounce silver coin is worth about what an ounce of silver trades for that day, plus a small premium. Easy to track, easy to sell, no guesswork. That's what you want when the whole point is a tangible piece of your portfolio. Now let's say you're the second kind. You're a prepper at heart. You're not thinking about spot price in 20 years. You're thinking about what happens if the grid goes down and you need to trade for real goods with real people. If that's where your head is, then I steer you toward 90% silver, what folks call constitutional silver or junk silver. Now don't let the word junk fool you, because there's nothing junky about it. It's old United States coins, dimes and quarters and half dollars minted before 1965, back when they were made of 90% real silver. The reason junk silver is so good for bartering comes down to the size of the pieces. A silver dime is a small amount of silver, a silver quarter a little more. When you're trying to trade for a bag of flour or a box of ammunition, you don't want to hand over a whole ounce when a dime's worth would do. Small increments let you make fair trades without overpaying, and these coins are recognizable. Regular people know what a silver quarter is. You don't have to convince anybody it's real, because it was money in this country for 100 years and more. On top of that, you can combine the small stuff into big bags when you need to move real value, so junk silver scales down for a loaf of bread and scales up for something big. That flexibility is exactly why the barter crowd loves it. When you go to buy junk silver, folks usually sell it by face value in bags. You'll hear people talk about $100 face or $1,000 face, and what that means is the old face value stamped on the coins, not what they're worth in silver today. A bag with $10 in old face value holds right around 7.5 ounces of actual silver, because those coins wore down a little in circulation over the years. So you do a quick bit of math against the spot price, and you know what the silver in that bag is worth. What I like about buying it this way is the premium tends to be reasonable, because you're not paying for a fancy design or a collector's slab. You're paying for silver in a form that used to be spendable money, and that's about as honest as metal gets. Buy a few bags of that, tuck it somewhere safe, and you've got small, trusted, tradable silver ready for whatever comes. All right, so what if you're somewhere in the middle? You want a little of everything, you want it to hold value, and you want to be able to sell it easy down the road. That's most people, honestly. With $5,000, a common recommendation, and one I'm comfortable with, is to split it roughly half in gold and half in silver. That gives you the best of both worlds, and I'll explain why each side earns its place in a minute. But that 50-50 split is a solid starting point for a fellow who wants a balanced, tangible stack and doesn't have one single mission in mind. Now, if you're just starting out, and what you really want is weight and liquidity, something you can buy a lot of and sell fast, silver rounds are hard to beat. And of all the rounds out there, the Buffalo rounds are the ones I point people to first. They're a private mint round stamped with that old Buffalo nickel design, the buffalo on one side and the native chief on the other. That design is so recognizable that these rounds almost act like a currency of their own. People trust them on sight. They're liquid, they're affordable, and any coin shop in the country will take them back without blinking. For a beginner who wants to hold real ounces without paying a fortune in premium, a stack of Buffalo rounds is a beautiful thing. Let me take a minute here to explain premiums, because it's the thing new stackers understand the least, and it costs them real money. The premium is the little bit you pay above the spot price of the metal itself. Every piece of silver has one, because somebody had to mine it, refine it, mint it, and ship it to you, and they'd all like to make $1 for their trouble. A private mint round like a Buffalo carries one of the lowest premiums out there, because it's plain and simple and made for stackers who care about ounces, not artwork. A silver bar can run even lower per ounce, especially the bigger bars, because it's about the cheapest way there is to turn dollars into weight. A government coin like an American eagle or a Canadian maple carries a higher premium because you're paying for that sovereign mint stamp and guarantee. And a fancy collector coin can carry a premium so steep it makes no sense for a stacker at all. My rule is simple. If you're buying for the metal, keep your premiums low and your ounces high. Save the pretty stuff for folks who collect for fun. Now here's where I want to talk straight about silver versus gold right now, because the numbers I gave you at the start actually point you towards something. Gold is sitting near its all-time high. Even though it's pulled back a little from that $5,000 peak in February, $4,376 an ounce is historically expensive. When you buy gold today, you're buying close to the top of its range, and that always gives me a little pause. I'm not saying gold won't go higher, because it very well might, but you're not getting a bargain up there. Silver tells a different story. Even at $66 an ounce, silver is still sitting below its inflation-adjusted high. Back in 1980, silver spiked hard, and when you adjust that old peak for all the inflation since, a lot of folks put that number somewhere around $150 to $160 an ounce in today's money. So silver at 66 still has real room to run before it even catches up to a level it already hit once, decades ago. That's why a lot of stackers, myself included, see silver as the better relative value right now. When one metal is scraping its ceiling and the other still has headroom, I lean toward the one with headroom. So if you press me, I tilt your stack a little heavier towards silver. Not all silver, but a bit past that 50-50 line. But, and this is a big but, I don't want you to hear me knocking gold, because gold does one thing that silver simply cannot, and that's portability. This is where the second kind of buyer, the one thinking about hard times, needs to pay close attention. Gold carries an enormous amount of value in a tiny package. A single 1-ounce gold coin, small enough to tuck in a coin pocket, is worth over $4,000 today. To hold that same value in silver, you'd be hauling around a heavy sack of coins that weighs a good bit and clinks with every step you take. So think it through. If the day ever comes that you have to grab a bag and head for the hills, you are not carrying 50 pounds of silver up a mountain. It just won't work. Silver is heavy, and moving real wealth in silver means moving real weight. Gold, on the other hand, lets you carry a small fortune in your shirt pocket. So the go-bag crowd, the folks who want wealth they can pick up and move at a moment's notice, ought to be thinking about gold first and foremost. That portability is worth a great deal when the whole idea is to be able to leave in a hurry with your wealth intact. Now that brings up a fair problem, and it's one people don't think about until it's too late. Gold is wonderful for storing a lot of value in a small space, but that same quality makes it terrible for small trades. You cannot make change with a $4,000 gold coin. If all you need is a little something, you can't very well shave a sliver off the edge of it. So how do you get gold's portability and still be able to trade small? That's where fractional gold comes in, and it's a clever answer to an old problem. There are gold backs and gold notes out there now, little pieces that hold a tiny exact amount of real gold. Some of them run down to 1/1000th of an ounce, sealed right into a note you can hold and trade. So instead of one big coin you can't break, you've got small tradable pieces of real gold, each one worth just a few dollars. That solves the change-making problem completely. You get the density and portability of gold in a form small enough to hand across a table for a fair trade. This is exactly why I tell people it's smart to hold both gold and silver, and in more than one form. When you've got big gold coins, small gold notes, silver rounds, and junk silver all in your stack, you always have the right tool for whatever the moment calls for. Options are the whole game. Let me put some history behind all this, because it's easy to look at today's prices and forget how far these metals can travel. I can remember when silver traded for around $8 an ounce, and that wasn't ancient history. Then came the run-up to 2011, when silver climbed all the way to about $48 an ounce. Folks who bought at $8 and sold near 48 did very well for themselves. And now here we are, with silver north of $60. The point isn't to promise you any particular number. The point is that these metals move in big, long waves, and there has always been room to grow for the patient man who buys at one price and holds until it's worth a great deal more. Silver has done it before, more than once, and I believe it has room to do it again. And I'll tell you, the patience is the hard part, harder than the buying. I've watched silver sit dead flat for years at a time, where a man starts to wonder if he made a mistake putting his money into a metal that just sat there. Then, almost overnight, it wakes up and runs, and all those quiet years suddenly look like the smartest thing he ever did. That's the nature of it. You don't stack metal because you think it'll pay you next Tuesday. You stack it because you want a piece of your wealth sitting in something real, something outside the banking system, something that's been money for thousands of years and will still be money long after any particular piece of paper is forgotten. That's the long game, and the folks who win it are the ones who buy steady and hold through the boring stretches. That's also why I never tell a man to dump his whole 5,000 in on a single day. Prices bounce around, and nobody, not me, not anybody on television, knows exactly what silver or gold will do next week. So spreading your buys out over a few months takes some of the guesswork out of it. You buy a little at 66, a little at 62, a little at 70, and you end up somewhere in the middle without having to be a genius about timing the top or the bottom. It's a plain and boring way to buy, and plain and boring is exactly what wins in this game over the long haul. So let me pull all of this together into what I'd actually put in your hands if you handed me $5,000 and asked what to buy. First, we'd have that conversation about why you're buying and what you'll do with it later, because that steers everything. If you're rounding out a portfolio, we keep it simple with even weight coins and rounds, so your value is always easy to figure. If you're a prepper who wants to barter, we load up on 90% junk silver for the small, recognizable increments, and we mix in some fractional gold for the bigger trades. And if you're like most folks and want a balanced stack, We start near half gold and half silver, then tilt a touch heavier towards silver because it's the better value against its old high right now. As for the best things to stack overall, after 35 years I keep coming back to the same short list: silver rounds, and buffalo rounds especially, for their liquidity and that recognizable design, silver bars for stacking real weight at a good premium, silver coins with a government stamp on them, your eagles and your maples for the trust that comes with a sovereign mint, and 90% constitutional silver, that good old junk silver, for barter and small trades. On the gold side, a coin or two for portability, and some fractional gold notes so you can trade small when you need to. That combination covers every situation I can think of. Now a quick word on holding on to it once you've got it, because owning metal and keeping it safe are two different jobs. The whole reason a lot of us stack is to have wealth we can put our hands on, wealth that isn't sitting in somebody else's vault where a screen can freeze it or a bank can close its doors on a bad day, but that means the safekeeping falls to you. Keep it somewhere private, somewhere fireproof if you can manage it, and keep your mouth shut about how much you have and where it sits. The fewer people who know, the better. A good home safe bolted down where nobody can walk off with it does the job for most folks. The point of all this is control, and control means you, and only you, decide when that metal moves. Don't undo all your careful buying by being careless about where it lives. The biggest thing I want you to walk away with is the value of a diverse stack. Don't put all $5,000 into one single thing. When you spread it across silver rounds, silver bars, silver coins, junk silver, and a bit of gold, you give yourself choices. And choices are everything when it comes time to sell, because you can decide what to let go of and what to hold, depending on what the market's doing and what you need that day. A man with only one kind of metal has to sell that one kind, no matter the price. A man with a diverse stack gets to pick his moment. That's the position you want to be in. Think about how that plays out in real life. Say silver has had a big run and gold's been sitting flat. If you need to raise some cash that month, you sell a little silver into that strength, and you leave your gold alone to keep doing its job. Or maybe you just need a small amount for a small thing, so you reach for a bit of junk silver instead of breaking up a whole ounce. Every one of those choices is only possible because you built a stack with variety in it. The fellow who bought one kind of coin and nothing else doesn't get to choose. He sells what he's got at whatever the price happens to be that day, and sometimes that's a poor day to be selling. Variety is what buys you the freedom to wait for a good one. So there it is. Start with the questions, not the coins. Match the metal to your reason for buying it. Lean a little heavier on silver while it's still under its old inflation-adjusted high. Keep some gold for portability and hard times. Hold fractional gold so you can trade small. And build a stack diverse enough that you always have the right piece for the right moment. Do that with your $5,000, and you won't just own some metal, you'll own a plan you actually understand. And after 35 years of doing this, I can tell you that's worth more than any single shiny coin. Stack smart, take your time, and let me know down in the comments which way you're leaning, because I read them, and I'm always glad to talk shop with folks who are serious about protecting what they've earned.